is Brea Baxter, and I work at Keystone ADA. I am a tech integrationist and also on the AIW, Authentic Learning, Standards-Based Education, math team, wear many hats.
I'm Kelli Olson. I also work for Keystone ADA. I'm a school improvement facilitator, serving on standards-based grading, tech team, fine arts, world language, PE, computer science, so also wear a few hats at the agency as well.
And when we were designing our presentation today, we really wanted to leverage the expertise in the room, so we're going to have you all share. And we also were thinking, we wanted to make sure that our session objectives were clear. So we're hoping that when you walk out of here today, you will understand the curve effect. You'll be able to identify UDL guidelines used in the presentation and then apply the characteristics of expert learners to the classroom. And when we created the presentation, we really kept in mind UDL. So I want you to pay attention to what elements we are incorporating into our presentation today. So at the end, we will go over those and have a brainstorm of how they are incorporated.
So in honoring the expertise that we have in the classroom and to kind of leverage that, what we'd like you to do is we'd like to start the conversation. So if you have your phone on you, if you'd scan the QR code, or the link to our presentation is that bit.ly down in the corner, bit.ly/itech19 leverage. And that should get you to our presentation. And then once you are here, we're on slide 3 here. Let's start the conversation. And what we want to know in this room is how currently do you leverage learning for all of your students in your classroom? So we'll give you a minute or two to jump on that back channel chat. And keep this open because we will come back to it here throughout the presentation so we can share and collaborate together. The link not working? Oh, it is. Okay, excellent. I have after the keynote speaker talked about what she did with her link. Did you guys catch that? She said she tried to link in her math video into her lesson and accidentally linked in something that should not be in that lesson at all. So now when I was checking my links, it kind of gave me a phobia of, oh goodness, what links do I have in here?
So sharing how we currently leverage learning for all students. So hopefully there might be some ahas just from right there that you can take away.
But we'll keep going and hopefully you'll be able to walk away with a toolbox of things that you can use in your classroom. So we wanted to highlight this idea of the curb effect. And we walked right outside of our library actually and took a picture of the curb. And the curb effects idea really is what's necessary for some is almost always beneficial for all. So if we think about that idea of the way that they've flattened out the curve, yes, that can be beneficial with people that are in wheelchairs, but it's also beneficial for people that are pushing strollers, for people who are riding bikes. For me, and I don't trip falling off there, you know, it had an intended purpose, but it's beneficial for so many other than just its intended purpose. And some other examples that we put there, seatbelts, and we found that actually seatbelts were designed for children, but then that switched. There's an interesting statistic we found that switched in 1975, and actually seatbelts have saved 317,000 lives. So that intended purpose was just for kids, but that number includes adults and children as well.
And then when we look at that closed captioning, so that was actually the nation's first captioning agency. It was started in 1972 for the deaf and hard of hearing. And think of how often we use closed captioning. So like at a restaurant, or if I'm at the gym and don't have the volume on, and I'm able to read it. So we use it so much, and we've noticed that a lot of students like to have that option as well. So we've incorporated some of that too in the presentation as well, some hacks around that and transcripts.
Is there anything you guys can think of that maybe had an intended purpose, but we know is beneficial for a larger audience than who it was intended for? That has that curve effect idea.
Specific to education, I think about, we have a testing integrity committee.
Sure.
And we talked about what students should have access to, and it started more with that special ed focus.
Yeah.
And if it's good for them, it's probably good for more. So that has really expanded and changed teachers' perception.
Sure. Yeah, I agree. I think I used to teach in a district that had a high ELL population, and a lot of times we would have professional development that would be specific for strategies that they were targeting specific for ELL students. It's like, well, you know, those strategies are good for everyone as well too. So I think it definitely had that curve effect when we were digging into some of those things as well too. Anybody else or?
Okay, so moving on, we wanted to give you all some time to dig into the UDL guidelines. It will only take about 5 minutes. And you can choose to do this independently. If you wanted to work with a partner or a small group, you sure can. So we pulled some resources. We have a video, an interactive websites, text, a podcast, and of course we would just want to limit it to those. So you can choose your own too. So if you wanted to do a search and you find a quality resource that you want to dig into, please use that. But just to kind of do some independent research and to get more understanding around UDL.
And what we also wanted to do is make sure that we highlighted tools that can be used when giving these choices. So for the video, for example, we put make sure the closed captioning is on. For the interactive website and the text, we have that icon right there. It takes you to a link to the Chrome store that will be a read aloud text extension. It is free. It took us like 30 seconds to figure it out. Click it, it reads everything that's on there. And the last one is that podcast. And I was shocked that Podbean didn't require their people to put transcripts on there. And when we were thinking through this, a lot of transcription type software is expensive. And so we wanted to come up with a hack for that. And the workaround that we came up with, we made just a very quick Google Slides. Brea, if you want to click on that. And we put the link to the pod. You would go to Present, and we put the link to the podcast right in there. So you'd go ahead and click on the link, and go ahead and play it. And then go back to your Google Slides, and The captions, and then it would give you that transcription for those students that maybe have some hearing difficulties, or any kid.
Hello,
Again,
and
that
welcome to
curve
UDL
effect.
15 minutes, where educators
It's
discuss
making
their
me up too,
experience
but
with
if they
UDL.
need that text
I'm
along with
UDL
what
author
they're hearing as
and
well. So just kind of a quick free hack that would help with that. So go ahead and pick your medium, and we'll kind of give you, these will just give you a big overview of UDL principles, and then we'll go ahead and we'll dig into each one of them specifically.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Actually, I think the first time I did it was because they tried to say the first word in the presentation. See, did yeah. But I see more. So, yeah. Yeah.
We're also, not to interrupt you guys while you're working, but we're also going to have you jump on that back channel again. So if there's things that are popping up, what we're going to kind of have you put on there is a word, a phrase, and a sentence that kind of encompasses the overview of the UDL principles. So as you're searching, if you come across that and want to jump on that back channel, we still have a couple minutes left though, so take your time. sentence that kind of encompasses that overview of the UDL principles. Kind of debrief, and then we'll really dig into the 3 principles.
So what stood out to you? Again, it could be a word, a phrase, a sentence. Give you about another minute. Hopefully you're able to write your thoughts and also read what others have posted.
Any common themes or anything that you're seeing in the posts going up? I think the first time that I went to a presentation that talked about, I went to the 101 conference last year, was the first time that I went to a conference that had a session, that the session was focused on UDL, and the title is kind of what grabbed me. It was One Size Fits None. And so looking at the responses, I see individualized, flexible, personalized. So it's that shifting away from a one-size-fits-all model, or in the case of the presentation, one size fits none, to making it more personalized to the students' unique needs.
Yeah, and has been said too that how people learn is as unique as their fingerprint. So we think about that. Everyone learns differently, so it's our responsibility as teachers to really provide for all of those students, regardless of how they learn best.
So we're just going to watch a quick clip, and he kind of gives a little bit explanation of each of the 3 principles, and then we will dig in further into each of those.
I want to make a general comment about the guidelines. Typically, and in the video that you'll be seeing, we tend to go vertically, talking about perception, then language and symbols, and then comprehension. And it has a feeling of inching your way through the guidelines, through the checkpoints. But I want to talk a little bit more globally, which is to say that actually the goal of UDL is along this horizontal, the bottom of the table here. Options for comprehension, for executive functions, and self-regulation. But this is where we want to end up. This is where we want kids to be. That is, that they comprehend whatever's in front of them. They have good strategies. They know what to do. Similarly, they have great executive function. They make good plans, set goals for themselves that are appropriate, and monitor their progress. And lastly, similarly in engagement, the affective domain, that they are, in fact, able to self-regulate. It's not that they have to be stimulated by the outside world, that they're in charge of how things interest them, what they engage in, and what they're willing to put effort in. So this is the place we want to get to. And the other guidelines are, in fact, really part of getting there. We do need to make sure that everybody can perceive the world from which they're going to learn. And whatever's put in language and symbols, we need that to be interpretable by the individuals. But it's really to get to comprehension when we want to do that. And similarly, we certainly want every child to be able to act on the world, and to be able to be skillful in things like communication, be able to write and speak and so on and so forth. But the top of this is really to get to executive functions where they can plan a good essay or a good speech, make it, deliver it, monitor their progress, and so on. So it's to get to executive functions that these others are critical. And lastly, on multiple means of engagement, at the beginning, it's how do we recruit interest? But that's too external. We move a little higher when we say, how do the kids learn to sustain engagement and persist in spite of difficulties? But the top of that hierarchy is really, how do kids set good goals, personal goals about development for themselves? How do they cope? And how do they reflect on their own development and their own engagement? So, when you think about the guidelines, certainly there are three main principles, and there's a verticality that goes literally from the outside in. So these are things that have to do with perception on the outside. These things have to do with physical action on the outside. These things to do with how we engage from the outside. But as you move down to this final row, it's all about the kids themselves. It's internal. The kid is what's driving. So what we want to do is get to that. Students who are independent, self-directed, self-actualizing learners. So in an odd way, the guidelines go outside, in. Each of them do that. And here's where we want to end up. Thanks.
So we thought you did a nice job of capturing how we look at the guidelines. And just to reiterate that we really want to get to that goal is at the bottom. So we want expert learners who are purposeful and motivated, resourceful and knowledgeable, and strategic and goal-directed.
So what we're going to do now is you're going to choose one of the guidelines that you would like to dig into deeper. So this link here has that chart that he was just talking about. One thing to note that threw me off when I watched the video is in his poster he had engagement over here, and the two outsides are flipped. So that threw me off when I was watching it. But what we want you to do, all of these are links that give you suggestions, give you what this looks like. We're going to give you some time to dig into one of those. And we want you to, like Brea said, keep that end goal in mind, that is the target, to be purposeful and motivated, to be resourceful and knowledgeable, strategic and goal-oriented. And we want you to make a note of what each would look like, each would sound like, and each would feel like. So we have representation, we have, is that expression back there? Action and engagement over here. So you pick, split up, which one kind of is something that you would like to maybe focus on in your classroom or develop a little bit deeper. You will have the opportunity to kind of look around at what others are including as well. But we'll give you, if you want to bring your device over so you can pop into these links, and they kind of keep going. So you get a link and a link and a link, it kind of keeps clicking that way.
All with the goal of what does it look like, feel like, and sound like for the learner. Each of those.
Yeah.
So if you click into each of these, they go in deeper and it kind of gives you more, kind of summarizing what these would look like in the classroom, what it would look like, what it would sound like, what it would feel like, yeah. And a lot of them will like go, so if you want to go to the next one, and it'll lock you up, so it's kind of like a little bit of yeah.
So in each of those, what does it look like, sound like, and feel like the classrooms have strong engagement, action and expression, or representation? So focusing on one of those and adding them to the poster board.
I was going to say it looks like I think we've got it over there. Or it's got it over there.
I need to.
Exploring big ideas through, making videos. My wife was just saying she knows how to make videos and make kind of conversations.
One thing when you're reading those charts too, I always think about the top ones are the ones that I'm in control of. That's what the environment that I can set, the multiple means of representation that I can do, and I know that I'm successful as I work the way down, and that kids have internalized that, and now they are empowered to do the same as well.
It's more like true, more like an action. It's not necessity, so it's just simple. How much do you realize?
You have about 3 more minutes to finish capturing what that guideline looks like, sounds like, and feels like for students.
I didn't realize someone was over here already. I think I'm on the right path. Yeah.
Hopefully you're able to get your big ideas on the paper. So you really dove into one of the UDL guidelines. And what we're going to work on now is the next slide, where we're going to do a station rotation. And we're going to do approximately 5 minutes per station. But this is where we are going to get our toolbox. So things that we can use, strategies, tools, technology, or resources in each of these guidelines. So think about tools that you use in your classroom. I noticed up here, representation and what it sounds like. We already have closed captioning, so that's a tool that can be used. But we would really like to capture everything on a slide. So we have a link to these slides. So if you click on that, that is where you're going to add your ideas. So again, strategies, tools, technology, resources that can be used in that area.
And that's where I like to, those things that we put on the first slide when we did the overview of the UDL. Sometimes just knowing about some Chrome extensions that can be quick and can be easily, they're free, that's even better yet. Tech tools especially to provide that accessibility option for our students to make sure that, and again, we go back to that curve effect, even though we're probably trying to make it accessible for a student or a group of students, it's making it really more accessible for all of our kids as well.
So we're hoping that you can stay in those same groups that you had, but we're going to have you rotate to the next one. So we're not going to start with the one that we went through, the looks like, feels like, and sounds like, but go to the next one. And you're going to record on that slide deck. So what tools, what can we use? And hopefully this can be where we are sharing resources with one another.
Yep, so if you worked on engagement, if you want to pop up to representation, and then representation can go back to action and expression and find the next one off of that to kind of dig into this. There
Not
is a
ruining your
slide
feature,
for
am I?
each, like Brea
No,
said.
it's
Okay.
fine.
What do we actually have at our fingertips in our classrooms that can make this a reality for us? I'm going to rotate after I say it. Yeah, you can get a specific
Things that you think what are over with this is that it's just come up with some things that you can, background protection, but we see it's going on. Sure, yeah, absolutely. No, I know, someone mentioned, Google Research, which is on your assessment, but also, comes with an experience.
Oh,
Still, I'm still stuck.
oh, I'm so sorry.
You're fine. I missed it when we first did it. I text capitalized as always. Yes, I There we go. Okay. Perfect.
Then like, the more often you use it, the more just to know you, your voice, more accurate. Yeah, so if it like,
I really hate stopping good conversation, but to make sure that everyone maybe can zip around to if we could shift and kind of rotate to the next poster if you want to get the ideas that way. We leave a little bit of time for each one. Someone asked how specific. You could write down to the tool if you have specific ideas after having some conversation about the principles, as specific as you can get.
maybe like the first one for ways of customizing the display of information has something like sketch noting as really common now too. So that could be one for representation.
I even think VR, augmented reality, I went to one this morning that talked about, like, yes, we can read about them in the textbooks and we can watch videos with that, but like the Google expeditions and the merge games where they can actually pull that whole augmented and virtual reality piece too of engaging with content that way. Which is to the, you know, you think about Minecraft and all of, you know, the world, you know, and, you know, TinyNet, I don't know if you guys have used CoSpaces at all, but it's a, well, it was free, it's free to a certain extent, but it's a website that they can create virtual worlds and they add in characters and you can, there's also a programming piece to it as well, that they can program their characters and do different things. I used to work with collaborate with the social studies teacher, and one of the options that the kids had was they could retell their Greek myth and the importance of their Greek myth through the CoSpaces world. Yeah, and then yep, and then it has an app with it too. So when the kids were finished, they could read the stories, they could watch the videos that they created, or if they, which most of them did, to be honest with you, chose CoSpaces because it talks, you know, it's their language. You can get, we checked out the iPads, we were one of one PCs, and then we had a cart of iPads, and they can scan a QR code and like walk around each other's world. Yeah, it is a really cool, and it's easy, like it's drag and drop. So, yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yep. I mean, Make Believe Comics. I used to use Toondy, was the one that how Toons. Yep. Yep. I mean, there's sure.
The kids kind of create like, you know, based on the story, like
Yeah.
dictate this part of the story for a cartoon. That's cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure. Awesome.
So we are hoping that you got to most of them, and you might not have gotten back to your original one. We have some great ideas that are shared here. So I hope that you will take time to look back at the resources that others in the room are used or have heard of that can help students internalize these guidelines. And
Go ahead, Brea.
I was just going to say, on some of them are on multiple slides, so we know that they're good for more than just one of the guidelines.
We had a conversation up here, and I think it was a good one about representation. Yes, we think of text, we think of symbols, we think of videos, audio, but sometimes we forget that augmented and virtual reality piece too, whether it's through Google Expeditions or just a new way that kids can engage when that content can not only be represented, but then they can be creators of it as well too. And I just think that that's such a powerful medium that they're so used to Minecraft and things like games like that it just seems to fit with their skills as well too. So before we have just a couple minutes here, and we really appreciate you guys coming and engaging in conversation, we want to come back to our session objectives for the day, where to make sure that you understand the curve effect, identify the UDL principles used in the presentation, and we're going to slip back to that one in just a second. And then hopefully you're walking away with a toolbox that you can apply some of these characteristics of expert learners in your classroom. So if you had to give a speech to someone as you walk out of this door and you only had 15 seconds to tell them what the UDL principles are, or what they're like, what they include, what would you say? lunches on top of it, yes.
There are ways,
And, go ahead, yeah.
there are ways to get students to take ownership of their own learning and how they receive it and how they show it.
Absolutely, so getting to that internalize factor, definitely. Anyone else?
Ensure that you're reaching all of your kiddos in whatever way that they can best learn what you're trying to teach them.
And it makes it relevant to them too. I think that relevancy is important. It means that you're able to make it relevant to the kids. Did you see any of the principles used or aspects of the principles in our presentation today?
That slide where we got to choose.
We tried, yep. Yep.
So that choice.
Yep. Anything else?
Well, it's not something from your presentation, but it's something that we really hit on when we were talking about engagement, and that's the community. And making sure that the community is not just respectful of one another, but that values diversity, right? Diversity in thought and diversity in the way you're expressing what you've learned, and allows for those different modes of action and expression. And but I think it's creating that environment in and of itself and with the students to make sure that when somebody tries something different, that the response is positive.
Absolutely.
It definitely pulls in, as you were talking, I was thinking of that growth mindset
Yes.
culture right in there, that mistakes are, viewed as learning, a learning process, and not have that negative connotation and things with it that really, I agree, getting that established right away and expecting that throughout.
The empathy piece too.
Excellent.
Yeah, and it is 210, but we're really hoping that you were able to see some of them used in practice today. And we tried to embed the captioning tool in there, like with Google Slides, and also that add-on, that quick add-on that you just add, and you're able to have things read aloud online.
I did see a lot of tech tools also in the slides that were being presented. Seesaw was a big one. Seesaw ambassador, like all day long. Yeah, that if you have not or do not use that, I know I saw some sessions at iTech, but right there you have text, you have video, you have pictures. It is like built right in there. So yeah, one of my favorites.
Yes. So thanks for attending our session, and if you guys have any questions, never hesitate to reach out.
Have a great rest of your conference. Thank you.